As always on this channel, I'm bringing you budget lens reviews and seeing if they're worth buying. And today it's all about the 7Aristans f1.4 lens, which is a manual prime focus lens which has a maximum aperture of f1.4. Now this lens is available on LMount, Canon R, Nikon Z and Sony E-mount, which is the version I'll be reviewing today. The price of this lens fits in the budget-friendly range of prime lenses at $189. But before we get too excited, let's see how it performs in the real world. Now 7Aristans have provided me with this lens for review, but as always they have no input into the video and I'll be reviewing it honestly. If you haven't seen my channel before, I make lots of videos about Sony cameras and lenses, so subscribe to the channel if you'd like to see more like this one, and don't forget to drop a like if you find it helpful. It really does help support the channel. So this lens is a 75mm prime lens for full frame cameras, which does mean if you're using it on an APS-C camera, it is an equivalent focal length of 112mm, which is a pretty tight field of view. That makes this lens especially suitable for portraits, headshots, and isolating your subject with strong background separation. Where this focal length becomes less suitable is in tighter spaces or for wider scenes where you want more of the environment in your shot. Now, as I mentioned, this lens is priced at $189, which is competitive for the price of the lens with these specs. Usually with any lenses that I review, I would use it in the studio to record the video, but the 75mm focal length is just too tight for my studio. So bear in mind that if you do need a decent amount of space to use this lens indoors. Now, looking at the lens more closely, it comes packaged with documentation in the box with the lens. Now looking at the lens more closely, it is an all-metal build, which makes it feel durable and substantial. The lens has a metal screw-on lens cap, which is quite unusual and does add a little bit of weight. Under the lens cap, you can see that it has a large lens element. Under the plastic rear lens cap is a metal mount, and of course no electronic connections as this is a manual focus only lens, and also there is no weather sealing. Looking at the aperture ring, which is closer to the front of the lens, it has an aperture range of f1.4 to f16 and is notched at each aperture brightness to make selection easier. This barrel has a smooth travel. The larger of the two rings is for focusing and is marked with the approximate focusing distance in meters and feet, with a minimum focus distance of 0.7 meters. So not exactly a lens for macro photography. This ring is tighter to move, but its travel is still smooth, making it easy to adjust, but not easy to knock by accident. You'll also notice the lens length extends as the focus ring is adjusted. The lens also has a 58mm filter thread. With this lens unmounted on your camera, you can see the aperture blades narrowing as you adjust the aperture. The lens weighs in at 408 grams, so not the lightest, but still small enough to be portable. Both the front and rear lens cap are included and feel practical. That front screw-on lens cap is metal and it does feel a little clunky to get on and off as you have to twist it off, so not my favourite type of lens cap. This lens has a manual focus design with a smooth focus ring. And like most 7Aristans lenses, it doesn't have electronic connections for autofocus or aperture control. The aperture control is entirely via the ring on the lens itself. This may be obvious, but I think it is worth pointing out, especially if you're used to adjusting this in camera. So one of the main selling points here is that ultra-wide maximum aperture of f1.4. Wide open, it does produce very smooth background blur and is excellent for subject isolation. Ideal for portrait work and artistic shots. The fast aperture also helps in low light environments, whether indoors or at night or in dim conditions, allowing you to shoot with lower ISO and maintaining clearer images with less grain. Of course, being a manual focus lens at this price, you don't get modern extras like autofocus or optical stabilization. If your camera has in-body stabilization, that will help. Otherwise, using a gimbal is probably essential using this for video. In terms of image quality, at f1.4 at the center of your images, the sharpness is decent but a little soft. For the best sharpness, you are going to want to step down to f2.8. At both of these apertures, you will get smooth and pleasant bokeh. Sharpness at the edges is a little softer as expected. Overall sharpness is decent considering the cost, and the out of focus backgrounds are fantastic. This lens didn't come packaged with a lens hood, and this did cause me some issues when shooting in bright light. It would have been a useful addition, as to be honest, most lenses do usually come with a lens hood. Against bright lights, you will get lens flaring, and also you do get some purple fringing at the edges of details, especially wide open at f1.4. The contrast of this lens is overall a little soft, and this does give your images a vintage look, which does work quite well for street photography, but may not always be the effect that you want, especially for portraits. There is also quite noticeable vignetting, which is the darkening of shots around the edges, especially wide open at f1.4. So overall, the 7Artisans 75mm f1.4 is a great choice if you're looking for an affordable portrait lens that delivers professional looking results. With its flattering focal length, strong background blur and good low light ability, it's a solid tool for anyone shooting portraits. It's also a fine choice for street photography. The vintage look to the images suits this type of photography pretty well. But of course, be aware, it being a manual focus lens, there is more work involved. For $189, it's a good price for such a wide aperture prime lens. However, there are some drawbacks in sharpness, so it is really only a lens for those who are confident using manual lenses. This is quite an unusual lens to look at with its metal finish and vintage look, and won't be for everyone. But at a reasonable price, you still can get some pretty interesting results.